He did a good job defending his private road concept to you and I, because we were both hammered, and he was in our face.
At 5 o'clock,
I know this
my
one.
bank called and asked me if I put a $1.02 charge on my credit card.
Well, that's not good. Someone feeling it out.
Yeah.
Okay, everyone, we're going to call the Common Council meeting to order. If everyone could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Michelle, if you could help us with the roll call, please.
Sure. Doug Saloga.
Here.
Jim Barron.
Here.
Jackie Valdi.
Here.
Wayne Dean.
Here.
Matt Grimmer.
Here.
Kevin Maples.
Here.
Tim Eicher.
Here.
Ken Atwell.
Present.
Tom Hafner.
Here.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right, we have a special order of business tonight. Presentation and awards to the City of Delafield police officers. Lieutenant, you want to come up and...
Hello, I'm Captain Bob Hagan with the Delafield Police Department, and I'm here to present some awards to some officers and a letter of commendation as well from an incident that happened in December of last year. I'm going to have to read my notes. I apologize, but it's not as long as it appears. On Sunday, December 9th, 2018, at approximately 3:14 p.m., officers of the City of Delafield Police Department respond to a single vehicle accident on I-94 near State Highway 83. They were requested to respond to assist the Waukesha County Sheriff's Department due to the unknown status of injuries to the parties involved and the distance the deputies were responding from. Officers arrived, contact the driver and the passenger of the vehicle. Both subjects showed signs of impairment. The officers attempted to identify the parties and stay with them until the deputies arrived. While officers were speaking with the subjects, the driver made a sudden movement and attempted to run towards oncoming traffic. Officers Hoffman and Walker and Lieutenant Nyron were able to prevent the driver from getting to traffic, gain control of her, and took her into custody. At the time the driver began moving towards traffic, there was a large pickup truck pulling a trailer operating at highway speeds approaching the scene. The female later admitted that she was attempting to kill herself by running in front of that truck during the investigation. While those officers were taking the driver into custody, Officer Shrubey quickly secured and detained the passenger to prevent the passenger from fleeing or becoming involved with the officers detaining the female. These actions prevented the incident from escalating further and decreased the chance of someone becoming injured. The actions taken by all officers early on in this incident played a large role in the outcome. Proper assessment was made upon approach to shut down one lane of traffic to give the officers a safety cushion and allow to position themselves in a way to quickly respond to the driver's actions. Officer Shrubey's decisive actions demonstrated teamwork, which is one of the values our department follows to accomplish our mission to provide effective and efficient services to residents and visitors in order to maintain a safe and secure community. Officer Shrubey is to be commended for his actions during this incident, which reflect the high standards we hold for all of our staff. This commendation is based on a peer recommendation and approved by the Merit Review Committee. Officer Shrubey. Quick thinking and safety considerations by the officers of this incident saved the woman's life and potentially prevented other people from being injured in a collision that would have taken place should she have been able to get in front of the oncoming traffic. The officers themselves were placed in a situation where they could have also been seriously injured or killed while saving this person. These actions demonstrate courage and our department values of efficacy, teamwork, and honor. The actions further align with our mission to provide effective and efficient services to residents and visitors in order to maintain a safe and secure community. Therefore, the Merit Review Board approves the recommendations for Lieutenant Nyron, Officer Hoffman, and Officer Walker to receive the City of Delafield Police Department Life Saving Award. Officers, please come forward.
Thank you for that presentation, well deserved. All right, we are going to go to item number 1, City of Delafield citizen comments pertaining to consent agenda items. This is just for the consent agenda items. Anybody have citizens comments for those? Seeing none, consent agenda comments are closed. Do I have a motion or questions about the consent agenda?
I'll move to approve this consent agenda.
Somebody has his hand up.
That's,
Hold on, we got you.
A second.
Second, okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? Okay, item number 3, City of Delafield citizens' comments pertaining to terms not on the consent agenda. So that's everything else. So if there's anything you'd like to speak to, please raise your hand and we'll just bring you up in order. Sir, come on up. That's okay, you can be citizen or non-citizens, it's the same. Any item on the agenda? But you gotta come up here and you have to give us your name and address.
Sure. Into the microphone.
Yeah, just sit down at the chair.
Thank you.
Tell us your name and your address.
All right. Well, hello. My name is David Rovin. I live in Neshota Farms, W331 and 3416 Maplewood Road in Neshota. 53058. I don't know if you need that or not. But. So I wanted to just make a comment or two on the farm, the Gell investment, and the manure spreading topic that is going to come up later tonight. And I was here back in August when it was first broached, and that was about 9 months ago. And I know it's back now, and I know there's an alternative that is being put forth. So for myself, I've been here about 10 years in Wisconsin. I'm an East Coast guy from Philadelphia. I've really grown to like this place and decided not to move back a number of years ago. And I look at the situation we have at hand, and I'm not an ecologist or a biologist, but I went back and I wanted to really look at what has transpired here that brought us to the discussion that we're going to have about the alternative that's planned. If you don't mind, I don't have the prestige of the lieutenant, but I did want to look at my notes, if you don't mind, for a second. Because I just wanted to retrace for myself what happened here that brought us to this point. And it might help add context for others that might want to speak. So I went back to 2016, grabbed an old newspaper article when the land that's going to be the discussion point tonight, the 260 acres, was sold to the Fay Gell Conservation Foundation. So it was about 3 years ago. And just read some of the comments that were made, both by the Reverend of the Neshota House and Mr. Gell. And I hope I'm pronouncing that name correctly. So, it was really about, trying to get back to a more natural state. It was going to be a conservatory or conservation land. Really talked about, and these are some of the comments I'm taking from the article from the gentleman, Mr. Gell, that, everything worked before the farmer got here. Then, basically farming destroyed the ecology. Long-term vision that I have is to restore the soil and the microbes and bring it back. And I am paraphrasing a couple things here, but it was, a very noble comment because the spirit of it was to get back to nature. and this is a key thing here, what we'll not return to is chemicals that grow in nutrient-poor soil and bring about concerns of the folks and the citizens here about the pollution that can arise from that and our concerns about that. So that makes a lot of sense. That sells itself. There's no reason to really add much more to it. And I looked at when we got together last year, and from that point, we have almost 3 million gallons of this manure waste that is put on this property. And everyone agrees it was done incorrectly. Everyone's apologetic for that. I get that. 600 truckloads of it. And then you pass an ordinance to say we shouldn't do that any longer. Neshota has an ordinance like that too. And then at that point, everything seemed to turn. Now all of a sudden it's, well, if I don't have the ability, the company that owns that land, to assume this waste, then I'm going to sell it, and I'm going to sell it to a developer. So I don't understand what could have happened from many of the comments made about this being a conservation land. And then all of a sudden, this thing is economically, going south because I can't put this manure on the property. It doesn't make sense to me. And I think in any business, I like to go back and say, well, what happened? What transpired here that we went from this state where we're going to be all natural and eliminate everyone's worries about pollution, the lakes, all that good stuff, and now we're at a situation where if I can't do this, I'm going to have to sell my property.
There's
Okay.
a 5-minute max.
Okay.
And you're past 3.
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry about that. So now I know that part of this proposal, I guess that might come tonight, is for a lesser amount of this waste being put on the property. I guess my appeal to all of you and to our other citizens is to really think about, is that a choice we have to make, or should we just say we don't want to have this on the property? And the reason I look at that is, I go back and look at some of the things coming out of the Wisconsin Groundwater Coordinating Council, their recent report. And one of the biggest things here from the test they do of wells is all their analysis says it challenges their previous assumptions about how pathogens are persistent and move through the soil. So even our own colleagues in another Wisconsin organization say we just don't really understand this. And by us going forward with this, I feel like you're subjecting dozens of homes, families, the lakes, you name it, to an experiment that I believe other folks think is going to work. I get it. But not all of us feel that way. And for the benefit of maybe a couple of corporations, a dairy manufacturer and the company that owns this land, we're subjecting dozens of people to potential harm. It doesn't make sense to me. I don't see why we're limited as a community, and to try to live up to the spirit of what was discussed in 16, that all we can do is decide, well, we might just do a smaller amount. Maybe no amount is safe, but why should we take that chance? Why would you want to allow a group of folks to be unwilling participants in this experiment?
Okay, your time's up.
And that's all I have to say.
Perfect.
So, thank you.
Thank you. Who would like to be next? Who would like to be next?
Good evening and happy Monday. My name is Tim Newbert. I live at 40 Neshota Road, Neshota, Wisconsin. And I also, as a citizen of Delafield, am here to again just talk about the manure ordinance that you'll be discussing later in the evening. I came here specifically to say thank you. Thank you to the mayor. Thank you to the common council members. 9 months ago, you made the decision to rescind the ordinance. And the basis for that was, in my opinion, I think some others, to send a good faith gesture to the landowner that we want to start over. Take a look at the situation, have dialogue, and see if we can compromise on something that would appease both parties. Based on the information that I've seen, I think you've been able to successfully do that. And again, I'm extremely appreciative. This is a situation where, as I spoke to you 9 months ago, from my vantage point, we have an individual that's willing to make an incredible investment in property that ultimately can be possibly preserved as farmland / green space. And for me, it's actually a tale of two stories. I've been personally involved in some other municipal meetings in another Lake Country community where they do have development on their back door, on their doorstep, which is the norm. This doesn't happen very often. And in most instances just like this, when it's there, the people are not in favor of it. They want their green space, they want their wildlife, they want their Lake Country community. So with that being said, I again ask you to look at the amendment and to pass it with the understanding that we were successful in compromise. It may not be perfect, but in my opinion, it's a perfect example of what can be accomplished if we communicate and we look at both parties and we make a compromise. So with that, again, I'm just here to say thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you very much. Who else would like to speak? Any other citizens' comments?
Scott Stuyvesant. I live at N34W33394 Hickory Lane, Nashotah. I wasn't here back in September, but I do live a couple houses away from the farm field. There's lots of farms around, which is great. I appreciate the previous gentleman's take about compromise. You guys are making great investment in the community. I love what you did down here at the riverfront here, you know, where I'm looking forward to be kayaking down the river. I love the extending out the bike trail. The bike trail is still too far away for a lot of safe people to get to downtown up north. The safest way for people who live a little bit more north to come down to downtown Delafield by a bike or walking is Mission Road. And you go down that way because there's not as many cars. It's a huge bike road, it's a huge walking road, and everything like that. So they can come down and enjoy Delafield. You know, we're in Lake Country, beautiful lakes all around us. We're in the middle of Lake Country. We're blessed with great groundwater, great water and everything like that. There's a sign right by this farm field that tells us, please be careful. This is the watershed. All the lakes and all the streams we enjoy on, and I know some of you live on some of these lakes, and we complain about runoff. We complain about weed growing. I see the weeds when I go on these lakes. We're complaining about that. And here, we're endorsing putting liquid concentrated manure. This isn't organic farming, it's organic material. This is not certified organic product coming off of this property. If it was, it would be a lot different than what we're experiencing here at all. I'm sure we all fertilized our lawns this weekend. I'm sure we got 50 gallons worth of liquid concentrated manure, dumped it all over our yards, had our kids playing it. I'm sure we did that. I'm sure I did that too. It's great that we do that. I don't know if people have went over the property when this happened. I had a surprise birthday party at my house. The flies, no one's talking about the flies. You know how thick these flies were? I went out and bought these bags to trap the flies. These bags contain 20,000 flies. That's their max capacity. I filled 2 of these bags, and it wasn't 1 week, it wasn't 2 weeks. Did you know flies, there's like this breeding pattern that lasts for 4 weeks, and then boom, they spawn again. I mean, this was 2 months. That road that people walk down all the time and bike down all the time for about 8 weeks could not use the road because of the manure spilled on the road and everything like that. We live in Lake Country. There's a lot of beautiful wildlife around here. If you go past those fields, any evening, you can count 20, 30 deer. There's probably 40, 50 wild turkeys around. After this happened, wildlife are smart. Wildlife were not in those fields. They did not touch those fields. They didn't come near those fields. And there was a sandhill crane family there, drank out of that water and died. The farmer claimed it was hit by a car. BS. I was there in the morning, saw the crane drinking from the stupid water, and 2 hours later, it magically is dead on the side. I'm sure that had nothing to do with the clean stuff we dumped on the property. So I don't need to speak 5 more minutes, but that's my 2 cents worth.
Thank you, Scott. Any other citizens' comments? Any other citizens' comments?
Yes, I'll comment.
Okay. Just so you know, once I do the third time, I'm closing them, so.
I'm looking at that. It was close. Thank you very much for letting me speak this evening. My name is Sean Newman. Let me spell my first name for the record. It's Jhawn. A little bit unusual.
Wow.
You all, I think, received an email from me today. I don't expect you to have read it or not, but I expressed some of my concerns that I have in regards to the manure spreading. I'm a resident of Neshota and Neshota Farms, N33 W33184. Maplewood Road in Neshota. I'm also invested in and have a home in the city of Delafield, 3124 Negawicka Avenue. So I'm heavily invested in this community because of its beauty and of all the charm that this brings to us. Though I do respect the privacy and the rights of property owners to make a profit and do what they need to do with their land. But at the same time, I think we need to take into account how they make their profit. And I don't want to go fully into my letter, but one of the things, the core tendencies of making a profit is assuming the liabilities that come with making that profit. And there are several liabilities that are undetermined and unknown. And let me give you an example. There was a gentleman who won the Nobel Peace Prize for DDT. It was around for 70 years and believed to be extremely safe. Won the Nobel Peace Prize. Today, it's banned. Causes cancer. Killed off wildlife. Do we really understand the impact of this? I don't know. I really don't. But have we done the due diligence necessary to make that commitment for this community? Do we understand the soil that is there today? Do we understand how that soil reacts to this manure? And if someone is going to make and profit off of this, they also should, key tenet of being in a business, is to assume the liabilities associated with that. So are we going to require a bonding for this? So that in the case that it is done poorly again, illegally again, what are the ramifications and what is the cost to clean that up? We commonly ask people who work in cities or do work on public land or their own private land to put up a bond for the work that they do. What I'm asking is that the company, that we do the due diligence to truly understand the impact, publish a report, and understand how that decision is made, taking into account everyone's concerns. But I think there's a lot of information. I think a study is necessary, and I think we can work with the farmer to do so. But there's concerns about the environmental impacts. There should also be for our roads and our bridges. Mission Road is a disaster. So if it's not 600, it's 300 tankers this time. What's the impact on the new bridges that we've just put in and through downtown Delafield? These are all costs borne by the taxpayer if there isn't recourse to the person profiteering from this. So with that, I will thank you for allowing me to speak, and I really hope that you take into consideration the concerns the citizens have. Thank you.
Great, thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Okay, any other citizens' comments? Any other citizens' comments? Seeing none, citizens' comments are now closed. Okay, we are going to jump a little out of order tonight to try and accommodate some of our guests. So we are going to jump to 7A under new business, discussion of possible action regarding resolution 2019-06, a parameters resolution authorizing the insurance and sale of not to exceed $2,420,000 general obligation promissory note, series 2019A. Come on up.
Yeah, just real quickly for the council, this is our annual borrowing that we do. This is the borrowing for the approved capital improvement budget that you passed in November. Plus this does also incorporate the $1.3 million approved by referendum for the roundabout by our residents. And with us tonight is Joe Murray. Joe is sitting in for Phil Cosson tonight, and he's going to give you a quick summary of the parameters resolution and what it is you're approving tonight.
Good evening. Thank you very much. Again, Joe Murray from Ellers, proud to be the city's financial advisor. As was mentioned, this is your borrowing for your 2019 capital improvement plan. It also includes a small refunding of last year's state trust fund loan for about $311,000 and the $1.3 million for Gulf Road. Based on the city's good credit rating of a AA2, which we anticipate will be able to be maintained with this issue, we expect that the city should be able to receive true interest cost of roughly 2.5% on this 10-year borrowing. It's been structured with level debt service, and it also anticipates abating the general tax levy with special assessments for the Gulf Road portion of the project. Based on the assuming the abatement for the special assessment, the projected tax increase associated with the borrowing is going to be about 8 cents a year going forward. All that is included in the report that was included in your agenda packets. The resolution that you have before you today is to issue an amount of up to $2,420,000 of general obligation promissory notes. We're doing this as a parameters resolution, and the parameter says that you will not sell these prom notes if the interest rate is higher than 3.25%. We will look to conduct the sale on June 3rd. We'll take bids, assuming that the bids comply with the parameters resolution. We will then execute the sale, and then you will receive the post-sale schedules, et cetera, at your next meeting following that in July. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have regarding the resolution or the proposed financing.
Tom, we're moving ahead with the schedule of putting out bids for all this stuff, so there's not any, the timelines all work is what I'm trying to get to.
Yeah, there's a few things that cause a slight amount of concern. The biggest thing is there's some land that we do need to acquire out there for the roundabout, but we do anticipate that we'll be able to get that finished up. There's a slight possibility that if the property owner there isn't cooperative, that we might have to go through eminent domain to acquire that property. That would put the project off a year, but we would still need to do the borrowing anyways, and therefore it's appropriate to go ahead with it,
So
assuming the project will.
Still have to wait and still not in
The project will most likely happen this year, and in order to make that happen, we do have to proceed with the borrowing. Worst case scenario is if it gets pushed to next year, we'll have the funds in hand.
So interest rates are down, huh?
They've come down a
From
little
last
bit.
year.
Yeah, they've trended down a little bit, but goodness knows what's going to happen with the economy based on all the things that are going on, the threats with China and moving a battle group into
It should be.
Iran.
I assume they're not moving around much in the next few weeks, I would hope.
Well, hopefully in the next month, but we did put in some wiggle room for market movement on this.
Yeah.
The schedules that you have been presented were based on a true interest cost of 2.55%, and if it holds still, that's why I said it should be around 2.5.
Okay.
And our cap is 3.25? Our ceiling?
Maximum, yes, maximum interest rate. If it does spike and rates come in higher than that, then we will not conduct the sale, and we'll come back and present another financing plan and resolution.
Well, I'll move to approve.
Second?
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Joe.
Okay, then we are going to jump to item number 5, unfinished business, discussion of possible action regarding the proposed manure injection protocol and agreement with the Gale Farm Investment LLC. So I'd like to thank the council for giving us the opportunity to work with the Gales to come up with an agreement that I think does a good job of mediating all parameters that I think are realistically within the city of Delafield's abilities and control. And the way I'd put it to you is you've got basically like 4 options. You can choose to do nothing, and the DNR rules as they apply to every other farm in this county and in the state will continue to apply. You can choose to approve the agreement that staff has presented to you tonight. You can, number 3, suggest changes to the document that we have tonight and ask to have it brought back to you. And number 4, you can choose to put the moratorium back on that you removed before. So, as I see it, those are kind of our 4 options that we'd like to head down. One of those 4 paths tonight with your input, discussion, and Tom's going to take it from there and give you the details.
Yeah, the negotiations were a long process. I want to thank the Gale family, and in particular JoJo Gale, for coming to the table and working with the city. What we were able to accomplish is we were able to work out some terms that are more stringent than what the DNR would require of them. The application rate for an initial application will be half as much as what the DNR allows. There are provisions in the agreement that if that first application goes well, that the Gale family can come back to us again and talk about increasing it to 75% of what the DNR allows. We were also able to double the distance, the minimum distance required from private wells for application. That minimum distance under DNR requirements is 100 feet. We were able to get the Gale family to agree to a 200-foot separation distance. And then also we have significant requirements in the agreement regarding communication and notification. We feel like that was one of the most important elements that was missing from the application in August of 2017, is it took everybody by surprise. Nobody was aware of what was going to be happening. Now there are, we're going to have to be notified in January or February about any application that might happen in the spring. We would have to be notified by April 15th about a fall application. They're going to provide annual updates, semi-annual updates in July and September regarding their plans for what they're going to be planting, whether or not they're likely to do manure injection that year and things of that nature. And we're going to be able to get notifications out to all properties within 1,000 feet of the farm regarding what the plans are, when applications may occur, and things of that nature. So I feel very confident that both sides in these negotiations gave as much as they could. I think it was a really good compromise as far as the outcome of the negotiations and the agreement that we're left to consider. You know, the DNR took into account my concerns with the manure injection, as well as all the concerns about from the residents when there was a public hearing in Economwalk. They addressed all those concerns in writing when they issued the permit to Tagline Dairy, and ultimately they're the experts. The DNR is they're the experts as far as protecting the environment in the state of Wisconsin, and I feel we've reached a good agreement which allows us to put requirements in place that are above and beyond what the environmental experts in the state of Wisconsin have required of Tagline Dairy and the Gale Farm. So before you is the agreement that we were able to reach for your consideration.
So if we don't approve something, eventually they can come back and inject under DNR guidelines, or?
Correct. As Kent laid out, there's a number of options that the council could put the ordinance with the moratorium back in place if the council wanted to.
We could do that at any time. We could do that next year. We could do that 5 years from now.
Yeah.
If we're unsatisfied with.
Yeah, and really, you know, some people have questioned, you know, what about enforcement? There's nothing with enforcement in this agreement. And from my perspective, that's enforcement right there. Is if we have another episode where things are not done correctly, my recommendation to the council would be to, you know, go back and look at doing that ordinance again.
I think there's a lot of really good stuff in here, and I think it took a lot of work, and it's quite impressive. My elephant in this room, or the thing that I don't see mentioned, but it is mentioned consistently from people who have expressed concerns, is the four-letter word CAFO. I think the problem people have is with CAFO manure, it is not inherently organic. It is very toxic, and I have an environmental science degree, so I do know what this means, and it concerns me because all of this wonderful language in here does not address, all poop is not created equal. If this were organically raised cows and we took, the happy cow's poop and tilled it into the soil, we wouldn't have the same angry citizens. So while we're looking at this, where is the percentage of CAFO, or is this all CAFO waste? Because that's a very different issue, and it's not just here in Delafield, it's all over the country anywhere, and we have hundreds of CAFOs in this state, and everyone near them are concerned. That's my only real concern is, can we say, yeah, you can do this as long as the waste is not from CAFOs?
I mean, certainly the council could request any changes to the agreement. I don't believe the Gale family would agree to that, and I think the expectation is that almost certainly 100% of the manure that gets injected will be from Kevin Griswold's CAFO.
So that's not, a lot of people would argue that's not organic because of all the waste from the animals.
And with all sincerity, Jackie, that's up to the DNR. The DNR owns and controls that process. And we're forced to follow, what the DNR says around that topic. And it's not the expertise of the city of Delafield.
No, I can guess not. I have one other question, and that is, when you say injection, what does that mean? Because my impression from the folks that visited us, I think last August, was that it was spread, not injected.
And to everyone's admittance, it was done incorrectly last time. So that horror story is what we're exactly trying to keep from happening.
So the last application in August of 2017, they were attempting an injection, and a majority of the manure was injected. However, they had problems at the turns. They had problems with equipment malfunction, where there ended up being pooling of manure in areas that wasn't injected. So it is widely recognized by the farmer, by the property owner, that what was done in August of 2017 wasn't appropriate, wasn't acceptable. And as you see in the protocol, all those types of things regarding how the turns are going to be made, how equipment malfunctions are going to be handled, that's all going to be documented in a report to the city of Delafield prior to the application.
I'd like to point out a couple of things. I was a part of all the negotiations. This is my backyard. It's my district. I'm 1,500 feet from the corner of the property. That's a mile away. When some people that spoke are 60, they've got easements that put them 60 feet away from it. But I've got 18 people in my district that are abut the property directly, and I've let most or all of them know and spread the word as much as I can. Anybody who I corresponded with that had a complaint back in 2017, which is half the city, but all the people that complained to me that I corresponded with, talked to in person or email, I emailed them a summary of what this agreement is and that it was coming tonight. And most of the feedback I got back was, thank you. This sounds like a viable compromise. And one of the key elements of it is that, and the language is in there, we reserve the right to modify it or revoke it or change it however we want to in the future. And we didn't enter into this. To say it was a negotiation is kind of a misrepresentation of what happened. It was a conversation from two people that had some issues, and there was a barrier of communication. And we broke that down, and we talked, had several meetings, came to something that was reasonable. I wanted a hard 30-day, I wanted a calendar in February of what's going to happen on what day of the year, and farming doesn't work that way. And so it took me a while to understand that, right? 30-day notice of the exact date. Well, if it rains for a week, we're not going to compel them to do it against DNR rules and best practices and put manure on a rainy field that's oversaturated and running off. So those are some of the things that, it was a dialogue back and forth. Some of the discussion and comments regarding, profiteering in that are I understand where that perception might come from, but this is not, I think Mr. Gales made the profit he intends to for his life. This is something that's a passion of his. This is not where, it would be a foolish investment to do what he did to make the money off of letting someone farm $3 million worth of property. It doesn't make any sense. So there's other motives, and the ultimate goal for the city and hope is that this does turn into conservancy. And part of the negotiations, someone that wasn't mentioned that was a part of it was Tall Pines Conservancy. And very fascinating individual. It's a part of that organization. Happens to be a farmer. He's an environmental engineer, and he's an attorney. And if you look at the agreement, I think most of those footnotes are his.
Yeah. He volunteered his time to help us.
And it was gratis, and we appreciate it. And he spoke very candidly from both perspectives. And one of the things entering into the agreements was, well, let's lower the amount and see how it goes. And I said, well, when we got the number 50% was proposed, I said, if it's only half as bad as it was in August of 2017, it's 10 times worse than anyone can tolerate. And it was not about quantity, it was about no notice, an incorrect application with the wrong equipment on site. We're doing Y turns instead of quick circle turns. The applicator didn't know the geography of the land. It was not done right. And so what we're doing here is an attempt to do it right. And give them the opportunity where somebody in one of our correspondences said, they need to prove that they can be good citizens and neighbors. And this is what this is. This is really what it is. And timing is everything. And something that was interesting was when I left church, Neshota, St. Joan of Arc in Neshota, on just east of Mission Road on Neshota Road, not too far from here. It's a couple properties north. The cornfields to the north of the church there that are in the city of Delafield, between 16 and Neshota Road, there was a queue of trucks lining up, and I've got a picture. I took a picture of it, but there's 4 trucks lined up that had huge chemical tanks on them, and there was a big chemical sprayer with a tiller behind it. It's exactly that happened on when Neshota was leasing this for same farmland for the past couple of decades. Not a whisper of complaints from people that saw that same corn grow every single year for the 19 years I lived there about what was being applied, because it didn't stink and there's no flies afterwards. Tilling it into the soil properly and applying 50% as much as best practices. The flies should be diminished. I'm not going to say they're not going to be there. I'm not going to say it's not going to smell. But we're going to know more about what's being applied and what crops are being used here than I do about what my neighbor's putting on his lawn, based on this agreement. And I think it's very responsible. And in just doing some research about what contaminants are possibly in this liquid fertilizer that's going everywhere that no one complains about, I came across this. It's the 50-word dollar of the day. It's Anthropocene. It's the Encyclopedia of the Anthropocene. There's a first edition, November 27th, 2017. I'm just going to read 7 sentences from it. It's a conclusion statement about the study of fertilizers and their contaminants in soils, surface, and groundwater. The conclusions. The information presented in this review indicates that fertilizers, in addition to boosting the agriculture sector, cause contamination of soils and waters. Fertilizers contain vital nutrients required for soil improvement and proper growth of crop plants. Being extremely vital for agriculture, fertilizers are equally harmful to the environment, human and livestock. In addition to mineral nutrients, they also contain various contaminants, including heavy metals and radionuclides. Along with the inorganic fertilizers, organic fertilizers also add potentially harmful and toxic metals, organic pollutants, and pathogens to soils and waters. However, organic fertilizers are more conducive to soil health as they increase the nutrient status, moisture content, aeration, soil microbial diversity, and organic matter. And skipping to the end of it, therefore, to cope with the adverse effects of fertilizers and their contaminants, it is necessary to develop crop varieties that utilize available nutrients efficiently. The future research should be directed to develop fertilizers with minimum contaminants to explore the optimum dose of fertilizers for a particular crop with minimum losses to the environment. Fertilizer-induced contamination of soil and water can also be minimized by adopting various control measures such as phytoremediation, application of lowest possible dose of fertilizers, wastewater treatment, nutrient monitoring, and mathematical models, public awareness, and legislations. Anyone that's talked with John Gale, and I'm not a disciple, he's a man of few words when you meet him, but he talked about, when he talked about renewing the soil health, and he declared that property, the soil, to be dead because there was one crop putting the phosphorus and nitrogen it needed to just grow that crop, and it would be raked from those nutrients each year with the corn that was harvested and then reapplied the next year. So yeah, it's CAFO waste, but it's including organic matter and the types of heavy metals, and especially I didn't know there was radioactive material because of the phosphorus mining in most phosphorus fertilizers. But it's really pick your poison, and we're going to know more about what's going on here than we have in the past. And if you haven't figured it out, I'm really sold on the communication that we've developed between the Gale family, the farmers, and the people that work for them that are going to be on site that weren't there before. And I'm a big advocate for passing the agreement as written and modifying as we need to going forward. So,
Is that a motion?
I'll make a motion to pass, to approve the agreement with the Gale family and have the mayor and city sign it.
I'll second.
Mr. Grimmer?
One
Any
question.
further
question.
discussion?
I'd first like to thank Tim and Tom and the mayor for getting involved in negotiating this agreement. I think it is a responsible agreement. This won't change my vote, but all the actions of the Gales have indicated their intent to put this land or treat this land as if it were in conservancy. Has there been any written or verbal commitment to do so, or a time frame to do so?
No.
No.
No, it's
Who is going?
a complicated subject, and frankly, that's kind of between Tall Pines and the Gale family.
But
That's
based
a
on their
discussion
history.
between them.
Yeah, based on their history, that appears to be the route that they're taking, and that's why we've been, that's why we've acted the way we have.
We all hope that's the next phase, right? We all hope that's the next phase.
Who's going to monitor the processes and the procedures? Who's going to be the watchdog for this?
Both the city and a representative from the Gale family.
Okay, city, somebody from your department.
Most likely I will be out there. I'm guessing Alderman
I mean,
Aker
just-
will be out there. I'm guessing
The mayor will probably be out there.
Yeah, we just want to make sure that it's followed through, because sometimes things are said and not followed through.
I'm confident there's going to be a lot of eyes watching the next application.
I've been trying to read the recent Farm Act. Do we even have the authority under the Federal Farm Act to regulate this?
Our attorney's opinion is that we had the authority to pass an ordinance banning application of manure that's generated outside the city.
Outside the city.
As far as, I don't know if I would call this agreement regulating it. This agreement only applies to the Gale property, and it's a cooperative agreement that they are willing to agree to.
And I'm not specifically talking about this agreement. One of our options, as the mayor stated, was to put back the original ordinance.
Correct.
And so I guess my question is,
So our
do
attorney,
we have the power to do that?
Our attorney has the opinion that that we do. I believe the Gale family questions whether that's accurate or not, and I don't think it's ever proceeded to court where we have a definitive answer.
It's fairly clear that they're not interested in litigation. That if they're not wanted here, they'll move someplace else. And it's not this threat like, I can't make a buck here, so I'm going to turn it into houses. He didn't pay bottom rate. He paid a developer's price for the land. So him next to someone else that would turn it into 115 houses with 115 wells, 230 cars. and that traffic was in competition for that property. So he paid what he wanted. This is, well, goes to my church too. I didn't know that until I didn't know who he was until these negotiations. But it's his backyard. I think he wants to do the right thing for the backyard, and he wants to be a good neighbor. And he knew he wasn't in 2017, and we weren't nice back to him. And over the last year and a half, we've come to terms. And I think it's reasonable to do what we're doing.
Any other discussion? All in favor on the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Abstentions? Passes. Thank you very much. Okay, we are going to jump back to the regular schedule, and we will go to 4A licenses.
That's in the field.
Michelle?
Okay, discussion and possible action to approve a temporary extension of premise requested by Joho for the Delafield Art Walk on May 31st, 2019.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes.
Okay, second item under licenses, discussion and possible action to approve 5 solicitor canvasser licenses on behalf of Aptive Environmental Pest Control located in New Berlin for the time frame of May 6th to September 15th, pending surety bonds for all of the 5 people listed.
Is this a environmentally friendly method of pest control?
They did not leave any materials behind.
Not to the bugs, it isn't.
They're solicitors, they paid their fee, and they want to go knock on people's doors to sell their product.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nate, don't know what they are.
Abstentions?
Sorry.
It's okay, passes. 4B, Planning Commission, Mr. Eicher, please.
All right. So this is kind of, the first 2 are old business, sort of old business. If you walked or drove here, you might have seen them. This is a developer's agreement with Soulfire Fine Art Studio. Right now, they're across the street from Ace Hardware, near where Office Max was or is. And they're moving downtown. And they're doing some beautiful renovations to a building right here. And we approved this in the Plan Commission. I'm fairly certain it was unanimous. So I'll make a motion to approve them moving to downtown with their developer's agreement.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes.
And the second piece is there's some reconfiguration, same business, reconfiguration of, there's some parking spaces that are going from parallel to the like on-street parking to nose in. It's going to get more parking downtown. Nobody, if you talk to them, and businesses are against that. And I believe there's a little fee too with how they're leveraging setbacks and other things with the sidewalks. So this was approved as well back in February from the Plan Commission and Public Works Committee. So I'll make a motion to approve this as well.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Passes.
Item number 3 is Rogers Memorial Hospital. Another thing in my backyard. If you recall, they have 2 residential or treatment buildings there. One is for 16 patients, one is for 8 patients. When they initially got this approval, they had the building was housing 16 for eating disorders, was for adults, and 8 was for adolescents. I preferred at the time that they all be for adults, and that I was the only one who tried to make that happen at the time. But their business model said they needed the 8 for adolescents. Now they're saying their business model needs them all to be adults, and they're going to take the adolescents someplace else. I think that is better for the community anyway, and it works for them, so it's awesome. The thing about parking is formalizing parking that was already agreed to and has been paved for the last couple of years. So I'll make a motion to approve this conditional use permit update for
Second.
Rogers.
Discussion. Just to clarify, there aren't, and I know you clarified in Planning Commission, this isn't an additional 40 parking spaces.
It is not.
Thank
It is, what it is they had,
All my questions are
Land bank.
rhetorical
Yeah.
tonight, by the way.
yeah, this is just updating the site plan that's in their agreement to reflect the fact that they paved those parking spaces almost 2 years ago.
And
And it was approved 2
Yes.
years ago.
And
yeah.
per the agenda, there's no change to their admission criteria.
No change to their admission criteria. The new building, or the change moving adults into the adolescents, still you need the same primary diagnosis as an eating disorder.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you.
Not done yet. This is a discussion action for a certified survey map for 402 Kettle Drive. I believe this is the property where at one point we had approved like a doggy daycare facility there, and instead of that, there's going to be a warehouse. It's all good. Plan Commission approved it, and there's a better stormwater management agreement put in place as well. So this is just updating the certified survey map to reflect that. I will make a motion to approve the updated CSM for 402 Kettle Drive.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Obsession? Passes.
So
And-
before you go with the next one, I have a conflict with this one.
Okay,
I will listen, I will abstain on any vote.
fair enough. And
Point of procedure or parliamentary procedure, if Jim abstains, can he participate in debate?
No, I will not.
No.
It's really his choice. It's what he chooses to do.
I have an interest in this property. The result of your actions impacts us, so.
And I'm not saying you shouldn't or should, obviously you have knowledge that is of
I
benefit
can't
to the
help you.
body.
As I understand it, just for all your benefits in the future, it's your call. You know, the city isn't going to tell you you can't speak or can't, you need, it's your call. What you want to abstain from, you have the right to do that.
And I'm familiar with the property and the packet. I was not a part of this discussion to date, so I'm not recusing myself, but I'm going to defer this to others.
Yeah, City Planner Roger Dupler is here to speak to this.
Come on
and
up, Roger.
Real briefly, we've got a potential developer that's looking at putting in single-family condominium housings on this property. And this property abuts a unimproved public right-of-way. I'll say unimproved from a road perspective. There is a bike path in it on Lake Drive. And it also abuts an alley on the other side, on another side of the property. And there is the potential where from city staff perspective, the alley and the right-of-way, the alley could be vacated in total. The right-of-way could be partially vacated. There is a bike path and a sewer in there that we have to accommodate somehow, either by preserving some of the right-of-way or by establishing easement. And whether the city would be willing to vacate parts of the right-of-way and or the alley could impact the number of units that a developer could realize on this property. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Roger.
Could I have a quick clarification? The alleyway is the bike path?
No.
No.
The alleyway is
What's the bike
between
path?
the
I know the bike
houses.
path.
The-
Okay.
the
Oh,
bike-
the alleyway is, okay.
But it would be if all your garages were in the rear, that would be how you would get to the
So
alleyway.
what are we referring to when we say the bike path?
Bike path is within the existing.
We're going to bring up a picture here
Lake
for
Street,
you.
right.
I looked at this, I can't.
Lake Street was part of the original plat of the city. It was never improved until we put a bike path in about, I'm guessing 8 years ago, 6 years ago maybe. That's the only improvement other than utilities that are in the right-of-way. There's never been any vehicular access in and out of that right-of-way. The petitioner is asking for your consideration to vacate the right-of-way and providing him more opportunity to create larger development and to accommodate more residents in the downtown.
So remember, this is for discussion and direction. I asked to have this on the council agenda because if you're not interested in vacating Lake Street, then the applicant needs to head a different direction. But if you really have no great value in keeping Lake Street and you would just as soon vacate it as staff doesn't really feel there's a long-term need for it, then the applicant's going to spend his money in a little different direction. So we're looking for direction from you. Do you have a great interest in keeping Lake Street and we should head in that direct route? Or does it seem unimportant and it would be okay to move forward with the assumption that we would probably vacate it?
And just to make sure everyone's on the same page with what we're talking about, if everyone could go to page 83 in the packet.
Oh, 83.
Everybody there?
Yep.
Yep. All right, so at the top of the page, you can see the word Lake Street upside down. So that's the Lake Street right-of-way up at the top that runs north-south, and the bike path and the sanitary sewer is existing within that. To the left of the drawing, just left of the numbers where it says 50, 50, 50, 48, you see the alley there in between the two properties, and that also is unimproved, never been used, and no foreseen use of that in the future.
What was it a right-of-way for?
For a possible alley. So throughout downtown, there was alleys platted when the properties were originally platted. Some of those alleys were realized and paved, and others weren't.
What's the size of that right-of-way?
The right-of-way, Lake Street, is 66 feet wide.
Okay.
Roger, the alley, do you know how wide that is?
The alley is 30 feet wide.
Okay.
So I have a question. If we consider the vacation of Lake Street, that doesn't necessarily guarantee any kind of density. It's be up to the plan commission and the site plan and all that other stuff,
Absolutely.
right?
That's exactly the point.
So there could be trade-offs for green space or how they manage the landscaping or buffer zones with headlights and all that other stuff, right?
But Roger, if you follow straight zoning, then it would result in additional units. Because the units are just based on meeting setbacks in this case, right?
Correct. There are two different variables at stake here. The first is how we measure the actual density, the number of units that could be achieved by, first of all, consolidating these 4 lots and adding to it potential right-of-way area to be vacated. Based on density for an R6 standard, which we've employed throughout the city. The other alternative is to evaluate it by unit width, which would be up to the builder, however they decide to achieve the number of units that would satisfy their pro forma. But in either regard, it has to conform to ordinance requirements. And that's the Plan Commission would pursue a reasonable site plan based on the direction received from the council.
So my point is that with the willingness to consider the vacation, saying that we do this, we might, we'd be willing to do this. I mean, in my opinion, it would be entirely contingent upon the aesthetics and the overall net, like what the finished plan would look like. And I'm thinking that might give them more flexibility to come up with something that's more optimal than if we just kept them in the box that they're in. And so, I mean, it wouldn't guarantee a density. It'd be up to the conditional use permit, right?
Correct.
Yep. Okay. I mean, what we're really looking for is if there's people that say, we want to keep Lake Street, right? If there's a strong feeling to keep Lake Street, then we need to hear it now. If you're willing to consider vacating it, then we'll move forward with that assumption.
Roger, would this be a conditional use?
In CBD2, it does require conditional use for multifamily housing, and it requires that because it's hierarchical, in that multifamily housing in CBD2, it refers to allowance of all the same uses as is allowed in CBD1. And in CBD1, it identifies any of the multifamily housing has to be done as conditional use.
Okay.
How many units are we talking about?
Well, it kind of depends on whether or not there's any vacation on the right-of-way or if there's a change in the zoning. But with the existing zoning, without the vacation, the calculations, assuming that they are 3-bedroom units, would be 5.5 to 6 units. If there's a reduction in the number of bedrooms to count, for instance, if they are all 2 bedrooms, we get around 6.5 units. If they're all 1 bedrooms, it grows to 7 units. And that's based on the application of the R6 density standards for multifamily housing.
And Roger, when you talk about 5.5 or 6.5, that rounds down, right?
It rounds down, yes. Yes.
Just to put a visual in your mind, these are row houses, and they're targeted, per the applicant's discussion with staff, for elderly housing. So you'd have to be 55 and older to live in them.
Well, that's important to know. I don't understand why we want to or need to vacate Lake Street. Is this for the developer's benefit to be able to have some flexibility, or I'm just a little confused? I know right where it is, obviously.
Sure. With the program that the developer has brought for us for consideration, he's having the row houses facing on Division Street with actual vehicular access from the backside.
From the back, okay.
So as to make them have a nicer curb appeal from the front and have hidden garages in the back. Well, in order to do that, he's got to get a driveway to the back. So that's eating up some of the width in order to get the driveway to the back. The alternative is, if you just went straight zoning, you'd have all the garage doors facing on Division Street.
Right. Gotcha.
So we're not.
And we have a path going through the Lake Street right now, right? So,
I guess, do we know how that's being used? I mean, is it? I'm assuming it's a bike trail.
it's a bike trail that goes through.
And that was part of the TIF for the McCormick.
Yes, for Delafield Woods.
We're talking about getting rid of that bike trail.
Not getting rid of the trail, just vacating the right of way to accommodate this new type of housing.
All right.
But securing both the existing utilities and the bike trail through easement.
And we wouldn't be asked to change up to approve the CSM until we had a plan that showed all this stuff that might go through the plan commission. So this is just discussion to say, or would be open to do it.
This is just discussion to determine whether or not this developer can move forward, assuming that the city would perhaps vacate the right of way. We don't want to go to the effort and spend the time of the plan commission and staff to come here as a last step to find out that it's not, that you don't confirm.
What are we not asking?
So one thing I wanted to clarify, Roger, the mayor mentioned that when we met with the developer, that he was proposing this to be elderly housing, and I believe you said that in more recent conversations that you've had with the developer, he's no longer going that route.
Correct, and I don't know that it's absolutely nailed down yet. The developer is here if you'd like to ask any specific questions. But we had entertained both the possibilities of the CBD2 multifamily, which requires a conditional use, but also the opportunity for R7, which is elderly housing. This is right across the street from the only R7 elderly housing that we have in the city. In order to do that, because this, on the comprehensive plan, once you cross Division Street, you're in the downtown district. The downtown district accounts for or allows for zoning districts, business zoning districts, and the densest residential districts. It does not specifically allow for the R7 district. So in order to achieve the R7 zoning district, there would also be a request to consider a text revision to the comprehensive plan to add R7 to the allowable districts in the downtown, which I don't think is inappropriate. There may be other opportunities to get, a pedestrian usage, the type of demographic that has money to spend downtown, within walking distance of downtown. I think it's a natural complementary zoning district for our downtown.
I don't object to consideration of vacating the aforementioned properties.
Anybody that feels differently?
I don't I think it makes sense to have that more dense housing in this area. Of course, I want to look at how many trees you're going to cut down for this, because that's my thing. And I really, seriously, that would be my only caveat. The location, though, makes complete sense to me. And so it's more a question of how, and there's not enough information there. So as far as like that particular vacation, which I just love that word, I'm, theoretically, I don't have an objection to it with the information I'm being presented with and knowing the location in my little head that it makes sense. I still would love to see it being over 55, just because I think it would be such a great location for folks like that to walk.
Sure, yeah.
Voting for my team.
And any other
We can make it to the library from there.
any other comments? Seeing none, thank you very much, Roger. I think we got the direction we needed. Okay, we will move on to,
Something.
no. 4C Lake Welfare Committee. Mr. Maples.
There was a Lake Welfare Committee meeting on April 18th. Discussion and possible action about changes and updates regarding the City of Delafield boathouse rules, application process, and approval process. We also discussed Lake Welfare's role in approving boathouses and possible changes and updates to the applicant process for boathouse approval. Impervious surface requirements was also discussed, as well as creating a cover sheet to better outline the process for application. Also, discussion and possible action regarding Delafield's involvement at the Clean Waters Conference for Nagawicca Lake Awareness presentation. And the meeting is arranged for this month, I don't have the date, with Clear Waters about Delafield's involvement. The annual Lake Awareness meeting is Friday, June 7th at 7 Seas. Lastly, discussion and possible action regarding the permit process and placement of fish cribs in Lake Nagawicca in the spring of this year. There's been instances of fish cribs that have been placed without Lake Welfare Committee notification. Chairperson Hausman requested committee person Tills to do some further research about permits and locations. This item will be followed up at the next Lake Welfare Committee meeting. The next Lake Welfare Committee meeting is rescheduled for May 28th, 2019.
Excellent,
That's
very good first report.
Hey, I'll make a quick comment on the, I smiled when you mentioned fish cribs being not, permitted or not notified. Sometimes people don't know what they're in for, because the fishermen will find them. And if you want those ice fishermen in your front yard all winter, you really have to think it through, and it's really to everyone's benefit to get Lake Welfare involved so that there's a plan. Yeah. So it's just my 2 cents. I wasn't at the meeting.
Great. Park and Rec, Mr. Grimmer.
Park and Rec had a meeting in late April. I was not able to make it. Please refer to the minutes. In review of the minutes, they had a discussion of adding a representative to Lake Welfare for better communication on issues that are pertinent to both committees. The Kids Free Fishing Day is May 18th this year, so get all those kiddos out there. And our park walk is May 15th at 5 o'clock. So anything else, please refer to the minutes.
Thank you very much. What time does the park walk start? Do you
5.
5?
5.
Great. Public Works Committee, Mr. Dean.
Our meeting last Wednesday, we approved the final draft plans for the roundabout at Golf Court so that we can start moving forward to putting it out to bid, start the bid process, then start the construction process, all with the hope of having it done in October 4th. We also then, there was an action or request for deer crossing signs on Main Street down by the Public Works. And after discussion, the committee chose not to put up any more deer crossing signs because there's so many places where we could put up this deer cross everywhere, and it wouldn't be cost effective or actually be that helpful. So we will not be moving forward with additional deer crossing signs.
Yeah, I'd rather see the reflection of their eyes than the reflection of a sign, right?
Great, thank you very much. Delahar Commission, Mr. Maples?
I was not at the meeting, but I have information that they're working on upgrading, an upgrade to lower the phosphorus levels. And Tim was there, I think. If there's
Yeah.
any questions, he can.
I can quickly brief you. The vice chair and I went with the plant manager, Scott, and our engineers, and we've been compelled, based on EPA and what the governor at the time raised his hand to volunteer us for, as far as lowering phosphorus emissions into the river, to upgrade the plant to meet unrealistically low phosphorus emissions, which we're able to do. So they were realistic after all. The delays in getting this implemented have worked to our benefit because it syncs up with some other things we should do anyways. This is above and beyond. It's going to be a couple $1 million, but we're switching from a sand filtration system, which was put in about 20 years ago, to a disc filtering system. And instead of adding chlorine to kill the bacteria, we're using UV lighting. So less chemicals, less phosphorus. It's going to be a win for the environment. Once it crosses the Illinois border, all bets are off about what goes in the river. But we're doing our best up here, and it's costing us some money, but we plan for it. It's going according to that plan. So.
There's a lot of talk about manure tonight.
That's it.
Different kinds of poop.
Yeah, ours and everybody else's.
Great, thank you very much. Police Commission, Mr. Sloga.
Yes, we haven't had a meeting this month. We have our next scheduled meeting on May 22nd, which I'll be part of, and we'll give you an update then.
Sounds great, thank you. Library Board, Ms. Valdi.
There was no meeting. The next meeting is the 14th of May.
Zoning Board of Appeals, Mr. Barron.
Well, I'll report, but Mr. Maples was actually there. Still has the old. But there was one appeal on a deck, and it ended up being tailored to an entrance to the house. And as I've advised a lot of people that we're really pretty stringent on these variances at this point. We have been for the last 10 or 15 years, so they changed it to make it get an access that's safe, but not a deck.
Got it.
I think that was reported on at our last meeting.
Mm-hmm. Oh, was it? Okay.
We're doubling up then, I guess.
Okay.
I pulled it.
Great, thank you. Promotion and Tourism, Mr. Sloga.
Yes, no meeting since the last council. My first meeting will be next Tuesday, so I'll provide an update then.
Sounds great. Lake Country Fire Commission, I don't believe they met. Lake Country Fire Board, Mr. Grimmer.
We had a meeting April 25th. Couple points of interest. The board agreed to sell the 2012 ambulance to make room for the new ambulance. The new ambulance is running well, looks good, but the 2012 ambulance is to be sold. Its value, don't get excited, its value is less than $10,000, and we'll get a few thousand. But in this budget year, any few thousand will help. The board voted unanimously to promote Tanya Renyon to Division Chief, specifically related to her efforts to improve and advance the training center, which has been so successful over the last several years. And in the chief's eye and opinion, they're sending Tanya off to many conferences, et cetera, and she's kind of the, in terms of rank, she's the only captain that really attends. So it was a well-deserved promotion for Tanya. Call volume is up for April, still slightly behind year to date. Everyone got fit tested for their N95 masks, which is a special mask that prohibits airborne disease like measles or SARS or anything like that. So know that your fire and rescue is all fitted to handle any measles outbreak. And just seeing an increase in mutual aid. Not much flu out there either. That's it.
Sounds good. Tree Board, Mr. Grimmer again.
No meeting, no report.
All right, Deer Management, Mr.
Just to update you, the numbers are the same from my last report as far as the number of deer harvested, but we did get a report back from the DNR regarding the CWD. None of the deer taken in Delafield proper city were tested for CWD, came out positive. However, 2 deer with CWD were in the town of Delafield and 1 in Genesee. So the DNR believes that we are really in the hot spot for CWD for the county. And thus next year, all of the deer that we take with nuisance tags will need to be tested for CWD regardless, whereas this year it was only 20% with our sharpshooters. Next year, all the deer will have to be tested for CWD.
And did you encourage animal lovers not to feed them because that spreads CWD?
It's always the DNR.
Okay.
It is against the law to
All
bait.
right, very good. Just want to make that point.
Get your bird feeders high up in the air so deer can't get them.
Wayne, does that include all the sharpshooting ones and all the bow?
Yeah, all nuisance tags that we get. So whether it's the nuisance tags we give to the bow hunters or the nuisance tags we give to the sharpshooters, well, all of them will have to be tested for CWD.
So with bow hunters, will they then be responsible for
We're
getting
gonna-
that sample to the DNR?
Yep. If they use our permit number and call in the permit as they're legally required to do, they'd have to then drop off the head at one of the kiosks or at the DNR office on Barstow and Waukesha. But I don't think that's going to hamper us. We had plenty of hunters in the audience at our last meeting last week that are excited about helping us put the program together, so I don't think it'll hurt us.
Great. All right, next is mayor report, no report. Report of city officials, administrator.
Yeah, I'll just mention that we are still looking to pull together a special council meeting in early June. We're still shooting for the June 6th date. I've got 4 committed aldermen to that date, so just trying to get a 5th one, and I'll be letting you know within the next few days where we're at on that, or whether we have to look at the following week to ensure a quorum.
Thank you much. Clerk's report.
I just have the discussion and action on the voucher list, please.
Move to approve the voucher list.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? Council request for future agenda items. Any items you'd like to have added to the agenda?
One consideration, I don't know how to word it exactly, but something along the lines of, as we move to the scheduling of the Milwaukee Street roadworks, to talk about some tree protection to the 2 champion oaks. Just some way to make sure that they're protected during that project, so.
Okay.
And I'll just use the open mic to amend my, or append my plan commission report. We did hear the preliminary presentation for the Hendricks property, which is a BP and former Hawks Insight. The public meeting, the public hearing for that is going to be the meeting in June. So they're going to present what they intend to ask us to move forward with the last Wednesday of June. So there's some time to mull it over, talk to your neighbors, get in the council's ears, get in your alderman's ears, get in the plan commission's ears. And make your opinions known, taking all input. It is going to be
The
the
only meeting in June.
Yes, the last Wednesday in June.
All right, I will refer you to correspondence, and seeing no further business, we are adjourned.